SaferWatch and law enforcement. SaferWatch is a powerful tool that enhances public safety by improving communication between law enforcement and the community it serves. Through the SaferWatch platform, agencies can send real-time emergency and non-emergency alerts, keeping residents and visitors informed about critical incidents, safety advisories, and community updates. Additionally, SaferWatch allows the public to report crime tips, suspicious activities, and threats, providing law enforcement with valuable intelligence. SaferWatch tips have led to the prevention of school shootings, stopped sexual predators, caught wanted fugitives and burglary suspects, and has even prevented suicides. This easy-to-use two-way communication tool ensures faster response times and helps protect the community proactively. By empowering both citizens and law enforcement, SaferWatch fosters a safer, more connected community. For more information, visit SaferWatchApp.com or download the free SaferWatch app on iOS or Android. Welcome to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm John Creamer, Deputy Executive Director of FDSA. Each episode, I sit down with law enforcement thought leaders to tackle critical issues shaping the future of public safety. Together, we'll explore key topics that empower law enforcement professionals to navigate challenges, lead with confidence, and advance their careers. Take a pause, gain valuable insights, and lead your career with purpose. Thanks for listening. Today, I am joined by two very dear and special people, Karen and Doug Monda, and they are with Survive First, and I am honored to have them on the podcast today. Karen and Doug, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
John.
So for our listeners who may or may not know about what Survive First is, I'd like to just kind of talk about the background and how I met you guys, and then let's just spill into what you do and how you just alter the lives of first responders. So Doug, I met you probably in 2019 through our good friend Doug Muldoon, and Doug is a retired police chief and knows almost everybody on the planet that's ever worked in law enforcement.
Very true.
And he introduced us at a conference in a hallway, and from there we started crossing paths, and then I heard your presentation, your testimony, and I was moved by it, and I found similarities between some of what you went through and some of what I went through, and I was just drawn to you through that. And I think our friendship has been established through some mutual struggles.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So, Doug, you're a retired narcotics agent from Cocoa PD in Central Florida. How long did you work there, and how did you get here?
I started there in 2000, I think. And I retired in 2017. I medically retired in 2017. And how I got here at Survive First, is that the question you're asking?
Yeah, just like you don't have to give all the details, but just a little bit of your story for our listeners who may not have heard it.
Okay. Yeah, so I joined Cocoa Police Department right out of the academy. I was recruited for Cocoa. I was actually recruited to be on their SWAT team. I spent my entire career at Cocoa on the SWAT team. I ended up leaving as the team leader. I spent most of my time as a sniper on the team and most of my career in some sort of task force. I wasn't a ticket writer. Spent most of my time chasing thugs and gun toters and drugs and, people like that. Spent some time on the task forces in my career. And to make a long story short, through that journey, I suffered tremendously from some of the things that I did and some of the things that I saw. And it was unaware of at my time. I'm a lot older. I've been in the game like you quite a bit. So I come from the suck it up, rub dirt on it era. And I was struggling really bad, didn't know what was wrong with me, and had asked for help. And the help that I received wasn't to par back then. And I found myself in a pretty bad situation, which ultimately led to a failed suicide. And after my failed suicide, I was lucky enough to have a really good supervision. I had a police chief at the time, came in. I think he was a chief about 3 days before my incident. And between my chief and my supervision, they had reached out to Doug Muldoon, who was the police chief at Palm Bay at the time. I'm a huge fan of Palm Bay because they essentially saved my life. And my chief, who was Mike Cantaloupe at the time, he reached out to Palm Bay and said, hey, I have a guy who's struggling. We need to get him help. And Doug Muldoon went into action. He knew some people, and he found a place for me to go to receive the proper help. And my chief at the time, Chief Cantaloupe, he believed in me. He knew that me personally and me as a police officer wasn't the problem, that I had something internally that needed to be dealt with. And once I received the proper care, I went to a treatment facility for mental health, and he brought me back to work. Right after I got out, I didn't lose my position. I didn't lose my SWAT team. And when I came back to work, I realized that the system was broken. In my eyes and in my opinion, the system was broken. We didn't have enough resources for police officers. The treatment that I received was subpar, and I knew that when I came back to work. And just a little side note, the day I came back to work, I went to roll call at like 7 a.m. And I used to, being a drug guy, you don't really get to hang out with the patrol officers that often. And I really loved everybody I worked with at Cocoa. So I went to roll call just to say hi to everybody, and I had missed them. I had been gone for a couple months. And the very first question and conversation I had that morning was a police officer next to me, and he leaned over and he said, Doug, can I ask you a question? And of course, I thought the question was going to be, how did you do this and how did you do that? But that wasn't the question. The question was, are you on medication? And I didn't take it as an insult. I said, yeah, I'm on medication. I said, why? And he said, because my wife left me and my doctor put me on medication because I'm so depressed. And I don't know if that's acceptable as a police officer. And when he said that, one, it broke my heart because he's a deputy now. I still to this day love him and have him on a mantle. And I looked around the room, and when I looked around the room, I saw a lot of my SWAT team members. I saw a lot of police officers I'd worked with over time, and I started to realize, oh my goodness, he is struggling too. He was with me at this shooting. He was with me at this suicide. He was with me at this child death. And so I knew all around the room that I wasn't the only one. And that moment is when I decided that I needed to use the tools that I had. I was a very disciplined and dedicated guy, as most people know, to the industry. So I took that and I went back to Palm Bay to Doug Muldoon and John Blackledge. They were the chief and deputy chief. And I told them what I wanted and what I thought we needed to do. And at that very single moment, those two put the plan in action. And that's how we ended up here today.
Okay.
Is the short version.
Most of that I'd heard, but some of that I didn't know. So a couple of things. What you and Karen don't know is yesterday I interviewed Shelly Stevens. She is one of the counselors out at After Action in California. And
okay. Pretty cool.
So Shelly, as you know, because you facilitated me getting out there, both of you did. And Shelly, within minutes of meeting her, had this imaginary key that unlocked everything in me, and I felt validated to share some of the things that happened in my childhood. I felt validated to share many of the things that I'd shared in my career, and that I had been, like you, I've been around the block so long that, my first sergeant that I worked for, his name tag said serving since 1963. So he could give a crap about how I felt, if I was having a bad day or not. He didn't, and no fault to him, but It was just a different breed. It was a different time and a different era. But one of the things Shelly and I talked about yesterday was a lot of what you just reinforced, is the stigma that goes with it. And then we often run out of our own runway. So let me camp out on you for a second. So again, our listeners don't know that, in my opinion, in my view of Doug, you were the precursor to some of these extreme athletes. To me, you are, I put you on a mantle with your physical fitness, and I think you did a lot of that because you were chasing down demons in your own mind, and you're just dedicated and committed. But after a while, that didn't work, did it?
No, it didn't.
No. and some of the other coping mechanisms that you had in place at the time stopped working, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's same, and that's what we talked about was some of the things that I did. Some of the avoidant behavior that I had was becoming a workaholic,
Yeah.
and after a while, it didn't work, and then the gym didn't work, and then relationships no longer worked, and then I just had to sit in the emptiness.
Yeah.
So, and we'll come back to this part later, but if it wasn't for you guys and your organization, I would not have known of where to turn. And that was in 2024. That was just a few months ago. I wouldn't have known that. But so Shelley talked about what you and I just reaffirmed. And then the other thing she talked about is even today, there's just this dismal landscape of qualified, certified first responder counselors. Would you guys agree with that? Karen, how about you? And Doug, what do you think?
I definitely would agree with that. I think that it is getting better. I think there are a lot of people and therapists who are taking notice, but we still have officers and first responders who have trust issues. And I believe that when you go to a therapist and that first time it doesn't work out, it's very easy to say, I'm going to push this off because I went to one and this was not the person that, that I felt could help me. And so I don't have the time or I don't have the money to move on to the next one and the next one and the next one.
I can break it down for you in cop talk. Okay, so Chris Scallon, you might have met him. He's part of the Trauma Behind the Badge team, and he told this several times. He said, clinicians, a lot of clinicians, when they deal with cops, it's a heavy load. Most clinicians deal with an average person that might have 1 to 10 traumatic events in their lifetime, where a police officer has 1 to 10 traumatic events in a week. And so this term of culturally competent clinicians came out there, and that's a double-edged sword. Who deems somebody culturally competent? Because if you spent 20 years hanging out with a police officer, does that make you culturally competent to be a police officer? And so what Chris told everybody was, this is just how it looks. If you go to a clinician and it doesn't work for you, he uses the example, if your sink broke or your toilet broke and you called a plumber and the plumber wasn't good and didn't do a good job, would you never call a plumber again?
Oh, that's good.
And the same thing with the doctor. He also said, a lot of police, I say police because I'm a cop, but even in the fire and first responder world, how do you understand what I'm going through? I'm a cop. You have no idea what it's like. And what Chris told us was, if you broke your leg and you went onto the table to get surgery on your leg, would you look up at the doctor and go, hey, are you culturally competent to operate on me? You would not say that. And so, the bottom line is a good experienced clinician is going to be able to do a good job. The experience, that's something we have to do. Even in law enforcement, we don't hire people to teach us with no experience. We take great detail and experience and knowledge and background. And that's just the same thing we as in law enforcement need to do as a whole, is to make sure that we are looking and researching and vetting the proper, clinical services that we need.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I can't wait for you two and our listeners to go back and listen to the podcast we did yesterday. This is amazing. So full disclosure or partial disclosure, when I started going to counseling, it was in church. We were heavily involved in a church at the time, and I thought, well, the problem is me, and the problem is at Southern Baptist sin and all these things. So I went to the pastor at church, who, God bless him, had grown up in the church and hadn't been down the roads I'd been down, and it was hard for me to relate, and it was hard for him to relate. So that didn't work out, and then it was like a round of speed dating, where you, like you said, Karen, you go meet with somebody, and you're like, oh, that didn't work. You check a box, go, well, I tried, see ya. A couple years later, I'm still dealing with the check engine light, and I go see somebody else, it doesn't work, and it just repeats until you meet somebody like Shelley. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, you get me. So anyway,
Yeah. It's like putting yeah, I tell people it's like trying shoes on. It's as simple as that. It's, just it takes a while sometimes to find the right pair of shoes that you really like. I'm fortunate that I found finally, it took me
Yeah.
several years to find a clinician that understood me, that I understood, and that spoke my language. That's another part, is to be able to communicate and to speak the language that I spoke and that I understood. So it's a process. It's a difficult process, but I think we're getting there. I think, we're making strides as a whole in law enforcement, and we're definitely better today than we were yesterday.
I agree. I agree. So going back to Survive First, so you talked about some of the things that led you down the road with Doug and the beginning of the Survive First Foundation. So what happened next? Like in the lineage of the organization, is that a Karen question or a Doug question?
Well, I have horrible memory issues. Karen's usually good for the long distance one, but yeah.
I think that, we founded in 2018, and like Doug said, with Doug Muldoon and John Blackledge right by our side. And from there, we built a small board of passionate and caring individuals who really took notice to what this problem was, not just here locally in Brevard County, but around the country. We started doing our research, finding out that first responders are more likely to die by suicide than by their own hand, and then took mine and Doug's lived experience to move forward. And one of the first things that came to our mind from our experience was the expense. And I was a teacher at the time, and Doug being a cop in Florida, I mean, we weren't breaking the bank. We're public servants. And so we
Oh,
had
I was making tons of money. What are you talking about?
we had 5 kids at home. And so when Doug came home from treatment, obviously there's that aftercare. You have to continue the work. You don't go to treatment. It didn't take 2 months or 6 weeks for the wheels to fall off and for everything to compound itself. It took years. So in 6 weeks, there was a little bit of work that was done, and things were getting better, but there was still more work to be done. And so we very quickly realized that I think back then it was a $50 copay. Now copays are sometimes upwards of $100 if you're looking at a specialist, and many times in mental health. We quickly realized that, wow, that $50 copay once, twice a week is adding up quickly to $200-$300 a month. And we have 5 children at home. And so there was that financial barrier for Doug to continue to work on his mental health. And so that was one of the big things that we realized was a barrier for all first responders to getting the help that they needed. And so one of the first programs we developed was our Treatment Assistance Fund. And that was really to help first responders that were in financial hardship access the care that they really needed to get better. So that was really the start of everything. And from there, it has just continued to evolve. We help first responders with funding all around the country. We provide education to departments and agencies. And we even have our STRONG program, which is more community-based, bringing the community and the first responders together to use movement and nutrition and exercise as a way to also focus on their mental health.
Yes, yeah. I see that you guys are going like almost holistic in everything that you do. There's all these other realms that are tying back into it, and that's exciting to see that. So, Karen, you a couple of things. So tell us your background. School teacher at one point, and then what happened?
Yeah. So I was actually a speech language pathologist, but I worked in the public school system for 22 years. I loved it. I loved being able to help children. But in 2022, Doug got sick. He had a stroke. And so I made the decision to step out of education and come run Survive First full time. I had been doing it since our founding in 2018, but that was going to work, teaching all day, coming home, and really just handling things in the evening. And it's very interesting how something that was so scary at the time, Doug having a stroke and having that long recovery. So yeah, in 2022, I stepped into the role of executive director for Survive First, and things really have been rolling since then.
Executive director in this house means she's the boss over everybody else.
Yeah.
I don't know if people understand. So she's more like a major, but she tells the chief what to do.
Yeah.
Is that how it is was it like that in your department?
Oh yeah, I was not the chief deputy at home. It was very clear to me that it didn't matter.
Just
the
check.
trash was
I thought
still.
I was
No, you're not immune. So Karen, you have a master's degree. What's your master's degree in?
Speech language pathology.
Okay. And that also, you could also say that ties into working with cops as well, right? I mean,
communication.
Yeah.
Yes, that I can expand that into so many things.
And we'll be right back. Every day you put your life on the line to protect and serve. Who's protecting you? United Badges Insurance Services operates as a dedicated resource for the first responder public safety community. Serving thousands of first responders, United Badges offers a wide range of products including commercial insurance, group accident and health insurance, and personal insurance such as auto, home, renters, rental properties, vacation properties, boat, motorcycle, RVs, flood, and umbrella. United Badges serves active and retired public safety personnel, public safety agencies, public safety associations, public safety support businesses, and public safety families and friends. Experience the United Badges difference. Call 800-566-5990 or visit unitedbadges.com to request your free insurance quote today. United Badges Insurance Services is a proud strategic partner of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. Applicants are individually underwritten by each respective insurance carrier and subject to insurance policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states. Promotional material for descriptive purposes only. Now back to the show. So the other thing you talked about was the treatment assistant fund. I think that's what you called it. So
Yes.
To your point, so let's say that, let's leave Doug and me out of it. A first responder goes to counseling. They're gone for 4 or 6 weeks. They get this in-depth, wonderful experience. The doors are just blown off and they come home and they do need a lot, just as much work at home as they did in those 6 weeks. And you're right, the copays can be tremendous. And then if they're doing the work, they're probably also have a counselor or somebody for their spouse. So there's another set of copays. And then there might be a third counselor involved for marriage counseling or relationship counseling. So that might be another set of copays, and then add in medication. So and you're right. And so in Florida, what a lot of people don't realize is there's 67 counties in Florida, and the majority of those counties are still considered rural. And Governor DeSantis labeled, half of those are financially constrained. So again, the starting pay or the median pay is $50,000 to $55,000 a year. So it is very draining. So how does your fund get funded? Is that through your not-for-profit?
Yes, we are. And really just through our very generous donors, just through private donations pretty much. And we have some local sponsors that help us with funding, like Dirty or Beer Company. They truly love first responders. And so they support our organization tremendously. But most of our funding comes from private donations from the public around the country. And I can tell you without those, we would not be able to do what we do. Just talking about that treatment assistance fund and that financial barrier, even sometimes getting through the door for inpatient treatment. Now we're talking deductibles, and deductibles are, depending on who your insurance company is, those can be $2,000, $5,000. So helping those first responders to get through the door for that inpatient treatment is a big piece of that also, on top of when they come home, and if they need that support so that they can get all the different therapies that are needed. And John, I love and I appreciate that you also brought up the families and the spouses, and that maybe the family is needing some counseling, and that marriage counseling might be a big part of that as well, because Doug and I know, and I'm, you may know as well, and many of the first responders who are listening, when we have a first responder who is struggling, the home is struggling as well. And so it's so important that not only our first responders are able to get that help and be seen, but also the spouses at home are seen as well.
Oh, 100%. So in that regard too, Karen, so you have a presentation, you're very candid about your experience, watching Doug go through his lived experience and your experience. I mean, you were right there with Doug, and then also times you were alone, as Doug was alone in this experience. And then you mentioned, your children. What's that like, being the spouse of a first responder who's hurting or who's in crisis? What does that feel like for you?
It was, I guess the best word I could use, it was heartbreaking, because here's somebody that I love and I adore so much, and I would do anything for him. But my hands were tied. I really wasn't able to help. He was on this, for a long time, on this destructive path, self-destruction. And I had to, as much as I tried to help, it was like I couldn't. And so when he went to treatment, I had to understand what was going on. And so I educated myself. I read books. I researched articles on what is post-traumatic stress, what is life like being the spouse of a law enforcement officer, what are critical incidents, what's depression, what's anxiety. As much as I could get my hands on to research in those 6 or 7 weeks that he was gone, that's what I did. And what it did for me is that it enabled me to understand that even though sometimes things felt deeply personal, they really weren't personal. Doug did not wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to train wreck my spouse's life. I'm going to go to work and yell at somebody when they don't deserve it. He didn't wake up saying, I want to be like this today. It was something that at the moment was just beyond his control. And for me, it was very difficult recognizing how hard it was for me to actually help him, for him to receive the help that I was trying to give him. And so I really think one of the biggest reasons that we got through everything we went through, because there was a whole lot, was because I educated myself. And I always say, and John, you probably remember me saying this, it's not making excuses, but it's having an understanding that this goes far beyond saying, oh, this is personal, this is against me. It goes far beyond that. So I think I was able to set my own boundaries, but also continue to support him in the best way I could. And what that led to over time was us recognizing that we need to find a different way to communicate, a different way to support each other. And also with Doug, one of the things that he came to understand over time was, I also need to understand that Karen has stress also. And so, those things just all kind of started coming together. But it was tough for a time.
Well, in just those few minutes that you were talking, there's like 3 podcasts that we could do, right? There really is. So so for most of our listeners, including me and anybody in my family that might actually tune into this, it's the old it's not you, it's me thing is real. It has nothing to do, Doug, it had nothing, what you went through or what you did to self-sabotage had nothing to do with Karen. It had to do with how you felt about yourself, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would even tell her that, like, you need to go. I'm going to bring you down. And, the pain and I call it September 11th pain. And you've probably heard me say that. And what I mean by that for the listeners was, I was a cop during September 11th, and I just remember the people jumping out of the building. And I thought that was pretty extreme, even to this day. And when I found out why they were jumping out of the building, they were jumping out of the building not because it was going to collapse. They had no idea. They were jumping out of the building because of the amount of pain they were incurring from the heat. And that's where my life got to. I can only explain so I was going through mental pain, really, really bad post-traumatic stress. And in that era, I was hit by an 11-year-old kid, stole a car and ran me over at work. And so I went from mental pain to adding now physical pain of a broken back. And the one component that I had in my life that just gave me the will to move forward was being an Ironman triathlete. It was such a horribly tough task that being able to complete that just gave me that little light at the end of the tunnel saying, hey, if I can achieve this, I can move forward and I can achieve anything. And that was taken from me in that moment. So the pain just doubled. And that was my reasoning for doing the best way that it was explained to me in cop talk was if you put, I'm a car guy. If you know anything about cars and carburetors, I was told if you put 2 grains of sand in your carburetor every day, you go to work, what would happen after a while? I said, oh, the car would run like crap. It would misfire and spit, spat, and sputter. And the therapist, who is still my therapist today, she goes, that's what your brain is doing. She goes, every day you went to work, you put 2 grains of sand in your carburetor. And she said, essentially, the carburetor was your brain. Yeah. And sooner or later, it'll misfire.
Yeah. And the self-sabotage, too. So, Karen, you had a front row seat to Doug blowing up his life. And you had the wherewithal to go, hey, this isn't about me. This is his struggle.
I did, but that's not to say that there were moments, like I said, there were moments where it felt deeply personal.
Sure.
But I think because of that kind of just diving into trying to educate myself to truly understand a little bit more about what really was going on with him and how did he get there. That helped me. I would have moments where, sure, I was, mad as all get out. I mean, there was a moment where I moved out of the house, but I also knew that this is somebody who truly needs help. And I believed in my heart that one day he would be willing to receive it, and he was. But it takes work on both parts, a lot of work.
Yeah. So, Karen, in your travels, I know you guys present a lot together, and you've also done presentations just about what we're talking about from your perspective. What resources would you recommend for a spouse or a partner of a first responder that is in the middle of a crisis?
I would say as far as resources go, there are many great resources out there. There's an organization called How to Love Our Cops, and they truly, truly focus on the spouses and the families. They have a call line for spouses who are in need of support. Other things, like I said, educate yourself. And it doesn't always have to be the law enforcement books. That's not really what I went to. Everything is very saturated, I'll say, with so many law enforcement books that are coming out or first responder books, but you can also get great information about just general mental health from researching, like I did on the internet. What is post-traumatic stress? What is depression? What is anxiety? And focus it tailored to what your first responder is actually going through. Also, support groups. But I would say be careful about support groups because sometimes you'll get into a support group and it will just be, you don't want it to be toxic in nature, where it's just this, everybody comes on and starts complaining about the things that they're going through. It needs to be supportive in nature, and reach out for help. Also set your own boundaries. And as spouses, we too are allowed to seek counseling.
Yes.
Not so that they can tell us what to do, but so that we can kind of figure out how to set our own boundaries and how to move through this together with our spouse.
Yeah, it's so important. And we talk a lot about law enforcement on our podcast. And what I'm also trying to do is weave a thread of leadership through there, and a thread of, for those who love somebody that's a first responder. And going back to what you said about counseling, what we used to say is under the leadership umbrella is leadership. Whether I'm working at Target, whether I'm working for a communications company or a law enforcement agency, leadership is leadership. We just try to make it a cottage industry of law enforcement leadership. And that's what you're saying too when it comes to PTSD, depression, some of these other, labels. It's not, crisis is self-defined. And a lot of the books and materials that are out there don't have the words law enforcement, but they're just as good, if not better, right?
There's a simple way that I tell people how that exists. And I learned this the hard way. Most people have been in an ER room, especially if you're in law enforcement or fire. You've been in an ER room or you've been in there yourself. Well, I spent several weeks in a hospital one time, and on my wall of my hospital room was a picture of 10 smiley faces. Well, the first one was smiling. The last one was like an angry red face. You know what I'm talking about. When I say this, everybody remembers the picture. And I stared at that thing for several weeks. And then it finally hit me one day. It didn't say on there, it said, "What's your pain level at?" And it never said if you're a cop or a firefighter. It just said, "What's your pain level?" And at that day I learned trauma is trauma, pain is pain. The trauma, most people that have conversations with you and I, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe you were involved in that or involved in shootings, and that must be stressful." And I always tell them, stress on a 10, a scale of 1 to 10, a 10 is a 10. A 10 for me and a 10 for Karen at school was absolutely no different. And that transfers into everything, into the mental health world, as you were saying about books. And, mental health is mental health. And, it just always takes one thing to break the camel's back, one little straw to do it. And it doesn't have to be a work thing. It can be a personal life thing that can do it. So,
yeah, because life comes in waves, right? I mean, it's in waves. So,
it sure does.
You could be dealing with the loss of a partner at work, and at the same time have a very sick child or a parent that's dying. And those are the things that are unseen. And when people are like, "Oh, he's really in a bad mood," or she's in a bad mood, they have no idea what you might be going through. But there are people like y'all. And Doug, the last time I think I saw you in person was at PCIS.
Mm-hmm.
P.S. Matt Walsh was on. He was the third podcast we did, and we talked about what FDLE is doing in PCIS and how that's expanding. But you told me my wheelbarrow was full.
Yeah.
So it takes people like you that are intuitive and then have the courage to tell somebody like me who's also an alpha, "What are you talking about?" And then I have to have the emotional intelligence later to go, "Damn, he's right." So it takes one to know one, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yes, it does. And it helps. It actually helps.
And for us, we constantly remind people, even like the wheelbarrow, there are times where our lives will become stressful for one reason or another. And every night we sit in the hot tub after dinner, and we will actually say to one another that I'll say to Doug, "You need to unpack that wheelbarrow." Or he'll say to me, "You are carrying so much stress around right now. You need to take some time and prioritize your wheelbarrow, if you will, and take those things out that don't need to be in there right now." It's like you said, life just comes in waves. And so you have to be able to use these tools continuously and evolve the tools as well for what's going to work for you in your life at that one moment in time.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me go back to the foundation. So we talked about the beginning, kind of talked about the middle, and now from the outside kind of peeking over, I just see that it looks like it's just growing by leaps and bounds. And you just had the gala. Was that the third annual gala?
Yes.
So tell us what does it look like now, and what's on the forecast?
Ooh, it has really kind of in the last, I would say, 2 years just exploded with the number of first responders who are reaching out for help. I mean, we really are staying the course. Our treatment assistance fund will always be there. We did just roll out our HOPE seminar, which is our education program for departments and agencies. We rolled that out this year. So we're really, really excited about that. And just kind of growing that fund so that we can help more first responders, getting the word out there around the country so that first responders know that we are here for them. We are not the only resource, but we're a resource for them to keep in their pocket. So if they need assistance, to please reach out, and just growing that network of departments and agencies that we support.
So how does that, I mean, I'm glad you said that about nationally, and that's what whenever I can, I bring you guys up too, because of our personal relationship and the benefit that I have received and my family has received from our relationship and what you do. But it's not a Florida thing. It's not a Brevard County thing. It's not a South thing. It's a national, right?
Oh yeah. We didn't ask for it. That's for sure.
But the need was there.
That wasn't the plan. I originally wanted to help my brothers and sisters that were around me in Brevard County, and just the need was so big, and we were doing such. I say we as an organization, we just have amazing people in our organization, and it was working out so well. And police and fire, we talk to each other, and if we like something, we're going to share it with each other. And a lot of people started feeling safe at this organization, and the trust came, and the belief. And next thing you know, people are calling us from Seattle and California and Boston, and it's just I'm proud to say we're doing the job, but it's also a double-edged sword. I tell people all the time, I wish I'd never had to pick up the phone. I wish we could fix this problem, but it's going to be a problem that's always going to be there as long as the job exists. And it's pretty neat that you mentioned Commissioner Walsh, because he's a guy at the top. And he knows, like, we have to have the buy-in from the top. And if we come in from the top, we can build better programs, better training for our first responders, and evolve with it, from the old school days, like you were saying. When I started at Cocoa, those guys were wearing cowboy boots and blue jeans and cowboy hats, like, at the department, right before I came there. And nowadays, that these agencies have peer support teams and wellness programs, and so we are getting there. It's just one day at a time.
Yeah. Well, tell in our closing moments, tell our listeners how they could find out more about Survive First, whether it's an educational piece or they need help. Where do they go?
Sure. Well, we are on our social media platforms, which are Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X as well. Our website is www.survivefirst.us. And through our website, you can access the application for our Treatment Assistance Fund, find out about our programs. You can contact us through the website as well. So all of the information that somebody who is in need of support, all of that information is on the website, as well as our events, things that are coming up, programs, initiatives that we are getting ready to announce. So all of that information can be found there.
Okay. You guys are also listed on our webpage and on our social media at fldeputiesheriffs.org. You're one of our strategic partners. And like I said, anytime I come across somebody that's in our field, whether they're police, fire, EMS, corrections, I try to steer them towards you because of just my own experience with the both of you. So
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, John. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
It is truly an honor to do what we do.
Oh yeah, it's I can't think of anything more noble is that these men and women that have given their youth and their health to help them finish strong is so important, you know. So, all right, well, Karen and Doug, two of my most favorite people on the planet. You've pointed me in the right direction. You've helped be a part of my North Star system. Thanks for joining us today. And to our listeners, please check out more about Doug and Karen and Survive First on the website that they mentioned and on social. And then, again, find out more about what we do at fldeputyssheriffs.org. Karen and Doug, thank you. Thank you for listening to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriffs Association. FDSA proudly serves over 25,000 deputy sheriffs across the state with legal benefits, vital training, and financial assistance in times of need. You can listen to previous episodes at fldeputyssheriffs.org or wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review and encourage your friends, coworkers, and those in the law enforcement community to listen as well. To learn more about the Florida Deputy Sheriffs Association and how we serve those who serve, visit our website at fldeputyssheriffs.org.